This video was made possible by NordVPN. Go to nordvpn.com/VPEN and get a 2-year plan with a huge discount, plus 4 months free. More on this in a moment.
And our country is being invaded by millions and millions of unknown people, many of whom are entering for a very bad and sinister reason. 2 years ago, we were a great nation, and soon we will be a great nation again. The decline of America is being forced upon us by Biden and the radical left lunatics running our government.
Donald Trump returns to the electoral circus.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
And not only is he back, but former President Trump is unleashed. He continues with the theory of electoral fraud in 2020, and straight from the coup playbook, he has even asked that the Constitution of the United States of America not be respected.
Do you throw the presidential election results of 2020 out and declare the rightful winner, or do you have a new election? A massive fraud of this type and magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Donald Trump.
Donald Trump doesn't give a damn if the courts and the formal investigations will shoot down his fraud theory. The former president seems to want to position himself above the rules, the laws, and the Constitution itself. Unless these serve his interests, then they're of no use at all.
Donald Trump believes we should terminate all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution, to overturn the 2020 election. That was his view on January the 6th and remains his view today. No honest person can now deny that Trump is an enemy of the Constitution. Liz Cheney, GOP congresswoman at the time of these remarks. The Constitution is greater than any president. End of story. Elon Musk.
There was a time when this behavior, his insults and constant lies, were justified by alluding to the fact that, well, ultimately, it was all part of the show. A way of stirring up the masses and highlighting a political discourse without fear and submission to political correctness. But I've already told you that Trump is unleashed, so now we can find new stories like this.
Trump expresses support for Capitol rioters as he continues to embrace extremist groups.
The former president is saying that people who participated in the Capitol assault were treated unfairly. Says his campaign is supporting some of the main defendants, and has even promised pardons if he returns to the White House. And keep in mind, he may want to turn that fateful 6th of January into one of the pillars of his campaign. It would be a way to maintain his denunciation against the system, whilst creating his own shield of fanatics. Very radicalized activists who could play an important role in the Republican primaries. This would also explain why the former president began his new political campaign by dining with anti-Semitic rapper Kanye West and Nick Fuentes, a known neo-Nazi who was at Trump's rally prior to the assault on the Capitol. The more radicalized his base is, the better. Trump has contributed to normalizing behaviors that at any other time would not have been acceptable and that have been bad for everyone. However, hold on a minute, because our intention is not to make a judgment of the former president, but to see why, this time, things may be totally different. Trump may have a very difficult time winning the primaries. The former president is losing support at a rapid pace, and right now, he is not even the biggest favorite among Republican voters. Could it be that Donald Trump's star is fading? Listen up. But first, congratulations! You have just won $1 million! I'm sure you've seen a similar message while surfing the internet. Be very careful every time you get such ads. Malvertising ads are created for the sole purpose of infecting your device with malware and viruses. Don't assume that an ad is safe just because you trust the site hosting it. In fact, malvertising has been found on a wide range of safe sites, from streaming platforms to major online media outlets. Unfortunately, there are not many safe ways to avoid this threat. Be aware that advanced malvertising can bypass some ad blockers or automatically initiate the malware download if you are on the same page as them. To stay as safe as possible, it is recommended that you have an antivirus installed, your operating system updated, and use NordVPN's threat protection feature to strengthen your device. In addition to improving your protection against phishing, with NordVPN, you can surf without borders, choosing from over 5,400 ultra-fast servers from 59 countries around the world. What's more, you can use it on up to 6 devices on every major platform: Windows, Android, iOS, macOS, and we didn't even forget about Linux. So don't wait any longer, go to nordvpn.com/VPEN and get a 2-year plan with a huge discount plus 4 months free. And remember that you have 30 days to change your mind, no strings attached. See?
The decline of Trump?
Donald Trump's political career as a Republican frontrunner did not begin on the 15th of June 2015, when Trump first announced his candidacy for the Republican primary.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
No, his political career began somewhat earlier, specifically on the 19th of November 2012, a few days after Barack Obama defeated Mitt Romney. Trump registered that well-known slogan that reads, "Make America Great Again," as a trademark. An electoral slogan with which he managed to become, against all odds, the 45th president of the United States of America, thanks to a huge electoral fluke that allowed him to take the usually Democratic states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin by a handful of votes. It was a narrow victory, but it was a win. At the time, Trump seemed capable of achieving the impossible. Today, however, things are completely different. You know what? We can highlight 3 key reasons why Trump will find it much more difficult to return not only as president, but even as a Republican candidate. And today, Trumpism is generating news stories like this.
Democrats expand Senate majority after winning Georgia runoff.
Georgia has traditionally been a Republican stronghold. However, Biden won it against all odds in 2020, and now in the midterm elections, the Democrats have also won the Senate race. In the runoff held in this state, due to neither candidate managing to exceed 50% of the vote, Democrat Raphael Warnock defeated Herschel Walker, a pro-Trump candidate. This was a major political victory for the Biden administration and a major setback for the Trump campaign. And that's because, in Georgia, Walker was the only Republican candidate in the 2020 election to fail to win. The other 8 statewide constituency races, including governor, secretary of state, and attorney general, were all won comfortably by Republicans. In other words, Walker was the exception. And the question is, what on earth differentiated Walker from the rest of the Republican candidates? Well, among other things, Walker was the only Trumpist candidate. In fact, Governor Brian Kemp went up against the former president by arguing that the 2020 elections were clean.
At Brian Kemp GA should resign from office. He is an obstructionist who refuses to admit that we won Georgia big. Also won other swing states. Donald Trump on Twitter.
Of course, it's not just Georgia. The midterm elections were a painful defeat for Trump. As you can see on the screen, of the 16 candidates for senator, governor, and secretary of state who were part of the Trumpist core in the battleground states that were won by Biden in 2020, states that are therefore vital to Republican aspirations in 2024, only 2 were victorious. And this is just a small example of the poor Republican performance in a midterm election that, in theory, was favorable to them. In fact, Republicans expected a big wave of victories that ultimately just didn't happen. The Democrats expanded their influence in the Senate and virtually tied in the House of Representatives. The results were clear. The candidates placed by Trump, many of them extremists who repeated the slogans of the former president, performed poorly. The defeats of pro-Trump Senate candidates Blake Masters in Arizona, Adam Laxalt in Nevada, Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania, and Herschel Walker in Georgia were particularly painful. And this brings us directly to the first clue as to why things may be different for the former president this time. It may surprise you, but Trump has become quite the election-losing machine. He won narrowly in 2016, lost in 2018, in 2020, and again in 2022.
If we dump Trump, we will start winning elections. If we stay with Trump, we will keep losing elections. That's the way I see it. Paul Ryan, Republican politician, former Speaker of the House of Representatives, and vice presidential candidate with Mitt Romney. I know a lot of people in our party love the former president, but he's, if you will, the kiss of death for somebody who wants to win a general election. And at some point, we've got to move on and look for new leaders that will lead us to win. Mitt Romney, senator from Utah.
When Trump announced his candidacy in 2015, the party had been riding a huge Republican wave that had carried them to 54 senators, 247 seats in the House of Representatives, and 31 governorships. Today, they are much worse off on all fronts. It may surprise you, but the Trump era has resulted in far less power for Republicans. That the former president was one of the few presidents to fail to win re-election was no accident. In fact, we're talking about a relatively unpopular candidate. In all polls, his disapproval rating averages over 55%. Just take a look. And he's not even the Republican frontrunner anymore. You don't believe me? See for yourself.
New poll finds Ron DeSantis has 7-point edge over Trump in 2024 presidential primary.
Of course, this is not the only key factor that explains why this campaign could become very complicated for the former president. The second reason has to do with the fact that he is going entirely on his own, something that is beginning to arouse some concern among the Republican ranks. For example, just before the midterm elections, Trump launched a campaign against one of the biggest stars the Republican Party has today. We are talking, of course, about Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. He is a former ally who has now reaped a great victory in Florida and is beginning to be relatively popular throughout the country. Well, Trump, recognizing his competition, has put him directly in his sights, and that explains news stories like this.
Trump goes to war against DeSantis.
And this is not an isolated case, not at all. Every time a Republican leader doesn't play his game, Trump makes him or her a target, no matter what it costs and no matter what it means for the party. The case of Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, or what is happening right now in Arizona, are also good examples. In the latter case, and with the help of organizations such as Turning Point USA, Trumpism has tried to purge all moderates and all candidates of the old Republican guard. In their place, they are putting up much more exalted, radical, Trump-loyal candidates, who, among other things, deny that the United States is a democracy. We are talking about an uncontrollable group that is also a disaster electorally. The fact is that Trump is going his own way and seems to want to make the Republican Party a submissive organization at his full service. As you can imagine, this is generating a lot of concern within the non-Trump wing of the party, which is still clearly in the majority. But we're not done yet. The third factor has to do with all the legal cases the former president is facing. And take note, because it is not that he has a couple of minor problems. No, Trump's judicial problems are up to his neck, from the theft of confidential documents on nuclear weapons to his involvement in the assault on the Capitol, along with tax problems of all kinds. It is highly likely that Trump will end up in the dock. At present, just a few days after announcing his candidacy, this happened.
Trump Organization found guilty of criminal tax fraud in New York trial.
Of course, this is only the tip of the iceberg. Well, these are the three key factors that mean that this time, the former president does not start out with any halo of success, and that, naturally, has consequences. For example, more and more Republicans are advocating turning the page, and this is true even among some well-known Trumpist figures.
A true leader understands when they have become a liability. A true leader understands that it's time to step off the stage, and the voters have given us that very clear message. Winsome Sears, Virginia Lieutenant Governor.
His own vice president, who distanced himself a lot following the assault on the Capitol, has already made it clear that he will not support Trump.
Pence on whether he'd vote for Trump in 2024. There might be somebody else I'd prefer more.
And take note that this rejection also includes important donors to the party.
Blackstone Schwartzman says he will not support Donald Trump's presidential bids. It's time for the Republican Party to turn to a new generation of leaders, and I intend to support one of them in the presidential primaries. Stephen Schwartzman, founder of Blackstone. GOP mega donor Ken Griffin, who's poured $60 million into Republican campaigns this cycle, called Trump a 3-time loser and said he shouldn't run for president.
We are not only talking about politicians and donors, but also about the media itself. Media outlets that have been so supportive of Trump, such as Fox and the New York Post, are already putting their foot down. And you know what? I think this is one of those moments where a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is how the New York Post has begun to treat Trump. And maybe more revealing is how they are beginning to consider the alternatives. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, is becoming the new big star of the Republican Party. And should he eventually decide to take the step of running in the first round, this could be a tremendous blow, yet another one to Donald Trump's aspirations. Why? Well, let's take a look.
Trump's executioner.
Coming from a middle-class family, Ron DeSantis studied at Yale and Harvard, served in the army, was a military lawyer, was deployed in Iraq, has been a congressman, and now in his re-election as governor of Florida, won by a clean sweep. DeSantis took nearly 60% of the vote in a state that, until now, was considered competitive for Democrats. That will no longer be the case. DeSantis even reaped a 15-point advantage among Hispanic voters, which earned him a win, even in Miami-Dade County, the first time a Republican has done so in the last 2 decades. We will make a specific specific video about the Florida governor and his political positions very soon here on VisualPolitik. So, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. At the moment, what matters to us is that we're talking about a very conservative guy who, according to the polls, is already the favorite of Republican voters. And not only that, while nationally Biden is 10 points ahead of Trump, he is tied with DeSantis. If he were to finally take the step of running in the Republican primary, that could spell the end of Trump's aspirations. Of course, it is not yet clear that he will run at all. But as I said, we will talk about all of that and more in a future video. For now, it's your turn. Do you think Trump will be the Republican candidate in 2024? Do you think that it's a good idea for him to run? Or should he step aside once and for all? What is your opinion of Trump? Leave us your answer in the comments and let's open a debate. And now, if you found this video interesting, don't forget to like it. Thank you so very much once again for watching. All the best. See you next time.